Marcus and I had been together for 4 years. The first 3 were like a fairy tale, but the last year felt like living in a house of mirrors where nothing was what it seemed. He started working late constantly, being secretive with his phone, and worst of all, he began gaslighting me about money. Our joint savings account that we'd built together for our future home was mysteriously shrinking, and every time I brought it up, Marcus would get defensive and claim I was being paranoid about finances. He'd tell me I was forgetting purchases I'd made or that I was bad with money and didn't understand our expenses. When I'd show him bank statements with unexplained withdrawals, he'd say they were for business expenses or surprise gifts for me that I was ruining by being suspicious. The psychological manipulation was so subtle and consistent that I started doubting my own memory and judgment. It was my sister Claire who finally opened my eyes. She's always been the smart one in the family, works in cybersecurity, and has this incredible ability to see through people's bullshit. One evening when Marcus was supposedly at another late work meeting, Claire came over with takeout and wine. She'd been watching me deteriorate for months, losing weight, constantly anxious, apologizing for things that weren't my fault. "Sarah," she said, pouring us both generous glasses of wine, "I need to show you something, but I need you to promise you won't lose your mind until I finish explaining everything." My stomach dropped. Claire pulled out her laptop and showed me a series of screenshots, Marcus's social media activity from accounts I didn't even know he had, photos of him at expensive restaurants with a stunning redhead, pictures from weekend trips I thought he'd spent working, but the worst part with the comments and messages she'd managed to access through some cybersecurity contact she had. Marcus was calling me his ball and chain to his friends, saying he was trapped in a dead relationship with someone who'd let herself go. There were messages about how he was just waiting for the right moment to leave, but first he needed to secure his financial independence. He was systematically moving money from our joint account into private investments and a secret savings account, planning his exit strategy while keeping me around to split the bills. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. 4 years of my life. 4 years of cooking his meals, supporting his career moves, believing we were building something together. I sat there staring at the evidence while Claire rubbed my back, letting me process the magnitude of his deception. "There's more," Claire said softly. "I think he's not just emotionally checked out, I think he's seeing someone. That redhead appears in way too many photos and they look pretty cozy."
That night, after Claire left, I didn't confront Marcus. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I opened a bottle of his expensive whiskey, the one he'd told me was too good for casual drinking, and I started planning. Not just my exit, but something much more satisfying. If Marcus wanted to play games with money and manipulation, I was going to teach him what a real masterclass looked like. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the entire day researching. I learned about financial fraud, about how to trace money transfers, about legal ways to protect shared assets. I also called my cousin Emma, who works as a private investigator, and my childhood friend Rachel, who had recently gone through a nasty divorce and had some experience with revenge tactics that stayed just within legal boundaries. Emma was immediately interested when I explained the situation. As a PI, she'd seen this pattern countless times and had resources I couldn't even imagine. Rachel was furious on my behalf and volunteered to help with whatever scheme we cooked up. By the end of that first day, we had the foundation of a plan that would make Marcus regret every lie he'd ever told me. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Emma would use her professional skills to track Marcus's financial moves and uncover the extent of his secret accounts and spending. Rachel, who's gorgeous and works in marketing, would accidentally cross paths with Marcus and begin what would appear to be an innocent friendship that would gradually become something more tempting. Meanwhile, I would play the perfect, unsuspecting girlfriend while secretly documenting everything and preparing my own financial independence. The goal wasn't just to expose him, but to make him pay, literally and figuratively, for what he'd put me through. Emma started her investigation immediately. Within a week, she'd uncovered the full scope of Marcus's deception. He hadn't just moved money from our joint account, he'd been systematically draining it for almost 8 months. The secret savings account contained over $30,000 that should have been ours. The investments he'd made with our money were risky crypto ventures that were already down significantly. But the most infuriating discovery was a series of payments to what appeared to be an escort service. "He's been paying for sex while stealing your money," Emma said, showing me the bank records she'd legally obtained through her investigative contacts. "And based on the frequency of payments, this isn't just a one-time thing. This has been going on for months." I stared at the evidence, feeling a strange calm wash over me. The hurt was still there, but it was overshadowed by a cold, calculating anger that I'd never experienced before. Marcus had systematically betrayed every aspect of our relationship while making me feel like I was losing my mind. Now, it was my turn. Rachel's introduction to Marcus was masterfully orchestrated. She started showing up at the gym he frequented, wearing outfits that were impossible to ignore. Within days, Marcus was finding excuses to use equipment near her, striking up conversations about workout routines and protein supplements. Rachel played it perfectly. Friendly but not overly interested, attractive but not desperate.
The first breakthrough came when Marcus offered to spot her during a particularly heavy lifting session. Rachel had deliberately chosen a weight she couldn't handle alone, giving him the perfect opportunity to play the helpful strongman. From there, she slowly drew him into longer conversations, learning about his job, his interests, his relationship status. He told me he's been with someone for a while, but they're not really compatible anymore, Rachel reported during one of our strategy sessions. He made it sound like he's practically single, just hasn't made it official yet. The arrogance is incredible. Phase 2 began when Rachel started complaining to Marcus about her own relationship troubles. She'd recently broken up with her boyfriend, she was feeling lonely, she wasn't sure how to get back into dating. Marcus, predictably, offered himself as a sympathetic ear and expert advisor. Soon they were meeting for coffee after workouts, then for actual meals, then for weekend activities that Marcus was paying for while telling me he was working overtime. The beauty of Rachel's approach was how she made Marcus feel like he was the one pursuing her. She'd express interest in expensive restaurants she'd never been able to afford, mention concerts or shows she'd love to see, talk about how she'd always wanted to try certain activities but couldn't justify the cost on her salary. Marcus, eager to impress and probably feeling guilty about the money he'd been stealing from me, started offering to take her to these places. Meanwhile, I was playing the perfect girlfriend at home. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, even suggested he deserved to treat himself more because he'd been working so hard lately. The irony was delicious. I was encouraging him to spend more money on Rachel, while he thought I was completely oblivious to what was happening. Emma had installed tracking software on Marcus's devices when he left his laptop open at a coffee shop we'd followed him to. Through this, we could monitor his messages with Rachel, his banking activity, and his search history. The picture that emerged was of a man completely convinced he was smarter than everyone around him. In messages with his friends, Marcus bragged about having the best of both worlds: a stable girlfriend who took care of his domestic needs and didn't ask too many questions, plus an exciting new woman who made him feel young and desirable again. He was planning to string both relationships along as long as possible, extracting maximum benefit from each. 1 month into the Rachel operation, Marcus was spending enormous amounts of money trying to impress her. Expensive dinners, premium concert tickets, weekend getaways to luxury resorts. But the most satisfying part was watching him struggle to hide these expenses from me. He'd started paying for everything in cash, which meant frequent ATM withdrawals that were draining his accounts quickly. "I need to transfer more money from our joint account," Marcus announced one evening over dinner. "There's some investment opportunities I want to take advantage of while the market's good." I nodded supportively, even though Emma had already warned me this was coming. "Of course, honey. You're so much better with financial planning than I am. I trust your judgment completely." The look of relief on his face was pathetic. He transferred another $8,000 that night, money that I knew would be spent on impressing Rachel over the following weeks. What he didn't know was that Emma had helped me open my own secret savings account, and I'd been quietly moving my own money to safety for weeks. 2 months into our operation, Marcus was getting sloppy. He had come home smelling like Rachel's perfume, had receipts in his pockets from restaurants we'd never been to together, and was constantly checking his phone for messages. The stress of maintaining 2 relationships was clearly getting to him, but his arrogance prevented him from seeing how obvious his deception had become. Rachel reported that Marcus was talking about leaving me soon, but first he wanted to secure a few more financial moves to ensure his independence. He'd mentioned wanting to clean out our joint account entirely and maybe take out a loan in both our names before ending things. The audacity was breathtaking, but it also gave us the perfect opening for the final phase of our plan. "I think it's time for the big finale," Emma said during one of our planning sessions. "He's about to make a major financial move that could seriously damage you legally if we don't act first. Plus, Rachel says he's getting more aggressive about wanting to take their relationship to the next level." We decided the climax would happen at Marcus's birthday party, which he'd been planning for weeks. He'd insisted on having it at this expensive restaurant, inviting all his friends and coworkers, making it a huge celebration. What he didn't know was that we'd been planning a celebration of our own. The week before the party, Rachel told Marcus she had a surprise for his birthday, but she needed him to meet her at a specific location first before going to the restaurant. She'd found this amazing rooftop bar with a view of the city where they could have a private toast before joining everyone else. Marcus was thrilled by the romantic gesture and agreed immediately. Meanwhile, I told Marcus I'd meet him at the restaurant, since I was coming straight from a work event. He was perfectly fine with this arrangement, probably looking forward to arriving with Rachel and showing her off to his friends before I got there. The night of the party, everything went exactly according to plan. Marcus met Rachel at the rooftop bar, where she'd reserved a private section with champagne and a beautiful view. What Marcus didn't see was Emma positioned at a nearby table with professional-grade recording equipment, documenting everything. Rachel started the evening by telling Marcus how much these past few months had meant to her, how he'd shown her what it felt like to be truly valued by someone.
Marcus, feeling confident and successful, began opening up about his relationship situation. With a few leading questions from Rachel, he started detailing his plans to leave me, his strategy for taking as much money as possible, and his excitement about starting fresh with someone who really appreciated him. "The best part is, she has no idea what's coming," Marcus said, referring to me. "She's so trusting and naive, she'll probably help me pack my bags when I tell her I've found someone better." What Marcus didn't know was that while he was confessing his schemes to Rachel, I was at the restaurant he'd chosen for his party, talking to every single person he'd invited. I'd arrived early and positioned myself near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived with a warm smile and a devastating revelation. I'd prepared a simple explanation. Marcus wouldn't be joining us tonight because he was currently at another location, cheating on me with another woman, planning to steal my money and disappear. I had evidence, including photos Emma had taken of him with Rachel, financial records showing his theft, and recordings of him describing his plans. Anyone who wanted to verify the story was welcome to wait and see if Marcus showed up, or they could check the social media posts I'd be making throughout the evening. The reaction was better than I'd hoped. Marcus's friends and coworkers were shocked, some were angry on my behalf, and a few admittedly suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to get involved. His boss, who'd been invited to the party, was particularly interested in the financial documentation, since Marcus had been claiming his recent expensive lifestyle was funded by performance bonuses. Around 9 p.m., Marcus finally arrived at the restaurant, looking confused by the mostly empty venue. Most of his guests had left after learning the truth, but a few had stayed to witness the confrontation. Rachel had texted him that she'd meet him at the restaurant, then disappeared, leaving him to face the consequences alone. Marcus walked into what should have been his birthday celebration to find me, sitting at a table with his boss, his parents, who I'd called personally, and Emma, who was still recording everything for legal documentation. The look on his face when he realized what had happened was worth every moment of the past few months of planning. "Surprise, darling," I said, raising a glass of champagne. "Happy birthday." The confrontation that followed was brutal and satisfying. Marcus tried to deny everything, then minimize it, then blame me for being suspicious and driving him away. But Emma had documented everything so thoroughly that his lies crumbled immediately. His parents were horrified by the financial theft and emotional manipulation. His boss was furious about the lies regarding bonuses and began questioning Marcus's integrity in other professional matters.
The legal consequences came swiftly. Emma had worked with an attorney to prepare all the necessary documentation to freeze our joint accounts and demand immediate repayment of stolen funds. The recording of Marcus admitting his plans provided clear evidence of financial fraud and intent to commit further theft. Within a week, Marcus had been fired from his job for lying to his employer and creating a hostile work environment. The expensive lifestyle he'd been funding with my money collapsed immediately. He was forced to move back in with his parents and take a series of part-time jobs to pay back what he owed me. But the most satisfying consequence was watching his social circle abandon him. Word spread quickly about what he'd done, and people began sharing their own stories of times Marcus had lied to them, manipulated situations for his benefit, or shown his true character when he thought no one was watching. His reputation was destroyed completely. The financial recovery took several months, but Emma's documentation made the legal process straightforward. Marcus was ordered to repay everything he'd taken from our joint account, plus damages for the emotional distress and legal costs. His secret accounts were frozen until the debt was satisfied. As for Rachel, she'd played her role perfectly and disappeared from Marcus's life the moment our plan was complete. She'd never actually been interested in him romantically, had never done anything beyond sharing meals and conversations, and had recording everything to protect herself legally. Marcus had been so confident in his own appeal that he'd never questioned why someone like Rachel would be interested in a man who was already in a relationship. 6 months later, I was thriving in ways I hadn't imagined possible. The money Marcus had been stealing was returned with interest, allowing me to make the down payment on my own house. My confidence, which had been systematically destroyed by his manipulation, was stronger than ever. I'd learned to trust my instincts again and had surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared about my well-being. Marcus, on the other hand, was still living with his parents, working multiple jobs to pay off his debts, and dealing with a reputation that followed him everywhere in our relatively small professional community. He tried to contact me several times, alternating between apologies and threats, but Emma had helped me get a restraining order that kept him at a safe distance. The last I heard, Marcus was trying to rebuild his life in a different city, but the internet never forgets, and his story had been shared widely enough that potential employers and romantic partners could easily find information about his character. The consequences of his choices would follow him for years to come. Looking back,
I realized the revenge wasn't just about making Marcus pay for what he did to me. It was about reclaiming my power, proving to myself that I was smart enough to see through deception, strong enough to take action, and valuable enough to demand better treatment. The woman who discovered Marcus's betrayal was broken and confused. The woman who orchestrated his downfall was confident, strategic, and unbreakable. The best part wasn't watching Marcus lose everything he'd stolen from me. It was discovering that I was capable of so much more than I'd ever believed. Emma and Rachel had helped with the plan, but I'd been the one to stay calm under pressure, to play my role perfectly, and to execute a complex strategy without making a single mistake. Marcus had tried to convince me I was paranoid, bad with money, and lucky to have him. Instead, he taught me that I was intuitive, financially savvy when given accurate information, and deserving of honest love. The lessons he'd intended as insults became the foundation of my new self-respect. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad about what happened to Marcus, if the revenge went too far. I always tell them the same thing. I didn't destroy Marcus's life. I simply revealed his character publicly and ensured he faced consequences for his choices. Everything that happened to him was the direct result of his own actions. I just made sure those actions had the appropriate consequences. That's the thing about perfect revenge. It's not about causing undeserved harm to someone. It's about ensuring that someone who has escaped consequences finally faces them. That someone who has been protected by their victim's silence finally has their true nature revealed. Marcus had counted on my love, trust, and discretion to protect him from the results of his betrayal. When I stopped providing that protection, reality caught up with him quickly. The woman I became through this experience was someone I'm proud to be. Someone who stands up for herself, who trusts her instincts, who demands honesty in relationships, and who refuses to accept less than she deserves. Marcus tried to steal my money, my confidence, and my future. Instead, he gave me something much more valuable, the knowledge that I'm strong enough to fight back and win.